everybody, Jaclynbaerart here. So today's video, I wanted to paint in my little sketchbook. It is a nice, cozy, snowy day outside for me. It's just perfect time to sit in my sketchbook and have some fun painting. And the fun thing is, extra fun, is that I'm going to be painting with something I haven't painted with in quite a while. And that is my traditional gouache paints. So as you know, I like to paint with my acrylic gouaches a lot of the time, but I'm hanging those up, they're out of the way, and I'm going to be painting with my traditional gouache. And the difference being that it's water-based, so when you put it on your palette, you can re-wet it, unlike acrylic gouache that once it dries, you can't reactivate it. So here in this very cute jar that I thrifted a couple years ago with this super cute strawberry lid, is all of my paints. And here are all the paints. As you can see, I have some shorter little tubes, I have some bigger tubes, and the other day it was really hard to know what color was what when they're in this jar. So I created these little color-coded pieces that I glued on top. So I will show you at the end of this video how I do it to these bigger ones as well, so that maybe it will work for you when you are organizing all of your paints. So let's go over all of the supplies that I have here today before we dive into the sketchbook. So first I have the paints that I showed you. I have a whole bunch of these Holbein Artist gouaches in the 5mm. I got a whole set of these so that I could test out and try a whole bunch of colors. And I got this whole set about 2 years ago, and I haven't really played with them. Perhaps you have some art supplies sitting around your studio that you also haven't touched in quite a while, so I encourage you to bust those paints, those charcoals, those pencils, those colored pencils, whatever it may be, and play with them on a nice cozy day. I also have a couple of Winsor & Newton designer gouache paints, and these are the ones that I'm going to be doing the same technique I did here to organize my little Holbeins, that I'm going to do the same for these bigger ones. So I have all my paints, and then I have a jar of water. I thrifted this glass jar years ago, and I love using it for my paint water. Today I have this palette sheet paper rather than using some of my ceramic palettes, just because I need to wash all of those. I've used all of them with my acrylic gouache, and I need to wash them all before I can use them again. So today we're just going to use the palette paper. And then I have my variety of favorite brushes. So I'm a big fan of the Princeton Velvet Touch Angular Shader. I have it in the 3/8 size. I also have this Princeton Art and Brush Co. round number 4. I don't use it all the time, but it has been kind of fun to play with round brushes. And my other favorite angular brush is this size 6 of the Raphael Precision brush. And for my little details, I have this Da Vinci brush that I really like using. And that sits on this little tin with a paper towel and then this little wooden brush rest to, just have all the brushes right there so that they don't get stuck to the paper towel. And then we have the sketchbook that I'm going to be using today. It is the Royal Talons Art Creation sketchbook. It's in this little square size that I really, really like using, and has a fun little sticker on it. I have used it a lot. I started it back, looks like in March, and we're trying to fill it up. I'm a little over halfway, so I think it's going to take me some time to still finish it. But I was playing around in it the other day with these really cute mushrooms that I was just like, I put on an audiobook and I just started painting from memory little mushrooms and little green bits here and there. And then I looked off of a reference photo and started painting these mushrooms with like a darker background using all of these paints. So I wanted to do some more mushrooms. So today I went to my stash of all of my thrifted books for my references, and I have this very cute mushroom one that has so many mushrooms, and it has so many mushrooms in it. Like, look how cute that is. That's so cute. And I saved this page because I thought that this fairy ring would be very cute to paint. There's a lot more in here, so we'll see if I get through to them as well, but I thought that this would be a perfect reference book to just sit and paint some fun little mushrooms. I don't know, it's fall time, even though it's snowing out today, it's still very fall-like in my heart that I want to paint some mushrooms. So let's get started. So for this painting, I don't think I'm going to really sketch. I think I'm just going to go for it. Let me tuck all these little pieces of the sketchbook down. Like I said, these ones back here, I just had fun from memory, just kind of painting some mushrooms, getting used to the traditional water-based gouache. And this one was really fun. I have never really painted such a dark background, but I thought it was really fun. And then the blooming effect on the gouache here, very beautiful. I kind of played with it a little bit more like it was watercolor for the background, which is the fun thing that you can do with this gouache. So let's start gathering some of the colors. I'm gonna get some browns, some more earthy tone colors. Let's see here, I'll probably want a little bit of white. And a little bit of this reddish color. So I have burnt sienna, burnt umber, and yellow ochre. So I think we'll start with those. So I have zinc and permanent white. I like to mix my colors with zinc white and then permanent white, even like this permanent white. I like to use more so if I want to make the colors a little more pastel than just lighten them, and to use as a highlight color. I'm going to squeeze a little bit of zinc white to mix with. Put the mixing white up here if there's any left. Ooh, getting pretty low. Getting pretty low on my zinc white, which is okay. I might need to get some more. So we'll put a little bit of this permanent white out there. So if I have to mix with it, that's just what I'm going to do today until I get more zinc white. So I'm going to use my round brush to just kind of mix some colors first. Sorry if you hear noises outside. I had to open my window because it was getting pretty warm in my apartment. I live above a garage, and it's a heated garage of my neighbors, so it makes this room really, really warm. So I have to keep like my window open during the winter months to combat and cool that down. So if you hear some noises, that's the heater outside, and I will leave in the description below all the materials that I use if you'd like to know that. So we're just gonna go for it. I have my reference photo just above me. And I really love painting things from nature like mushrooms or landscapes, because if you mess up a little bit, it's okay because nature is not perfect at all. So it's okay if it can be a little wonky of shapes compared to if you were doing like a more precision of a building or something. Not that you can't get creative with that too. I just find that doing more things from nature is a little bit easier and my preference. And if you want to know about this mushroom, it's a fairy ring marasmius. It is white to pale tan or reddish, so it's good that I have like these more tan colors with a little bit of reddish in there. Hundreds may sprout, forming a loose circle or fairy ring, as do many other mushrooms. Gills are creamy, far apart, often with smaller gills between. Stem rough, scaly, edible, taste pleasant, and odor fragrant. So that's the little bit that I learned about for these cute little fairy rings. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just using the book as like a nice little reference, which is fun to do, especially if you don't know what to paint or draw, because sometimes you might be like, ooh, I have an inkling or an itching to paint something, but man, I do not know what I should paint. And sometimes you might get on Pinterest or something and then get overwhelmed with too many ideas. So that's why I definitely love finding reference books, and then I just open to a page, flip through a little bit, and just pick from there. Because in your sketchbook, it's all about just playing. It doesn't have to be beautiful in any way, even though I know a lot of us want our sketchbooks to look beautiful. Some of my paintings in here are quite wonderful, but others are like really messy looking. So I'll do a sketchbook tour soon. And now, while some of it's still wet, I'm going to drop in like a little bit of this reddish color into it. My first layers, I kind of like to act like it's more watercolory to get the playfulness that gouache can be and watercolor can be. So we're going to kind of drop that right on the tops. Let it kind of seep into the other colors. Before I even go into making the green grasses, I'm going to, while it's wet, play around with what I can do with a wet on wet technique. I'm going to let other pieces dry so that I can layer up on it. So I am just going to play around with all of my brushes. I'll probably start with my round brush, and then as I get further along, I'll move to my Da Vinci really tiny brush. You can see how tiny those little hairs are. So I'm just gonna play around with these mushrooms a little bit. May or may not need to get some yellow in here. Permanent yellow deep. Yeah, I might add a little bit of that to my palette. Oops, a little too much. That's okay. Cool. So I am just going to play around with this for a little bit, and I'll check back in a moment. So I'm checking in with you. I meant to check in with you halfway through, but just got super in the zone of painting. But I really like where what this has turned out to be. I really like having this, I don't know, almost light grass color that I first laid down as like a little base for almost like little shadows or something. It's a very beautiful piece. I changed up the color from the reference. Open the reference again. So the reference photo is here, but I also noticed that it was here on the front page, so it was easier to have laying next to me. But as you can see here, it's a lot more yellow toned, I would say, in the grass and in the mushrooms. But for mine, I went with a more woodsy kind of palette, which I think is really, really fun. I think I might swatch some of the colors up here. So let me do that really quick. There, now it feels like a little bit more of a sketchbook by having like the little swatches to show that it's not like a finished piece. But I am finished with this piece, I think, for now, so we're just gonna set that to the side. And I wanted to show how I went about making all of these. Tuck those back in so that when I'm holding my jar, it's much easier to see all the colors, but I need to do these larger ones, so I'm going to show you how I do that. So I start with just a scrap piece of paper. This was from when I was cutting out 4x6 and 5x7 size sheets to paint on. These were a little bit extra. I always like to keep these on hand for even projects like this, but sometimes just to test colors before I paint them. But we are going to grab all these. So I laid them out, no particular order. So I'm going to use any old brush. This one's like a little bit wider, so I think it might be easier to swatch out the colors. We'll come back to the other one because it's being a pain to open. And I'm going to take some of the paint, just right there from the tube, and I'm going to paint just a blob of the color. Just like that. So I'm going to do that for all 5 of these. So now I have painted a little swatch of each of these colors. I would keep them in this order, especially when you're doing like this many that I did for this jar. I laid it out in a whole bunch of random orders because some of these colors, like these pink ones, are very similar, and I'd hate to not be able to put it on the right tube, if that makes sense. So when you do your little swatches to let them dry, keep the paints in the order that you did this. And I'm going to let it dry and we'll come back in just a moment. Perfect, so it's been a little bit letting them dry. I had to redo the yellow because this one had some of the oil that had separated and it made it wonky, so I just did the yellow again. So after you have all your swatches painted and they're dry, then you're going to take some scissors, whatever scissors you have, and you're going to cut little squares, kind of like I did here. I'm going to make mine a little bit bigger just because these circles are definitely much bigger than these circles. When it came to these, I also thought that if you had a hole puncher or something, you could just punch a hole out of this and then stick it on. I don't have one, so I just cut little squares instead of trying to do circles. So I'm going to cut all this. Perfect. So now I have all the colors cut to little squares, and now I'm going to grab my glue. Let's grab my glue. This is the only glue I could find in my studio right now. I have other glue, but we're just going to use this. So use whatever glue you have. And then I'm going to use my palette paper and then this end of a paintbrush so that I can dip into it and get the glue. I'm going to grab some of that glue, kind of stringy, and stick it to the top of the paint tube. Take the color, little color swatch, and just stick it on. I'm going to do that for all of them. So now I have all the color little swatches on the tops of these as well. So let's put it in here. Oops. Sometimes I find it easier to hold this to the side, so you can just slide these in, or else they fall down like that. Here are the final colors. I love having these little paint swatches right on the top so that it's so much easier for me to just see the color and know exactly what I'm getting. I think I might do this to my other paint tubes as well, but this is a perfect start. And I love this little lid that fits perfectly on top. Oh, it's so cute. So I hope that you enjoyed today's video, learned how to organize your paints a little bit more, especially if you have a lot of paints, kind of like I do. I don't have terribly too many, but I do have quite a few. And I hope that you liked this nice little cozy painting that I did with my traditional gouache paints. I think it was really fun to do. I'm going to continue filling out my sketchbook. I cannot wait to show you all of the things I have painted in it. But I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers.